Welcome to another video in the Time and Consciousness series. In the last video, I proposed the hypothesis that we are quantum beings. I said that the human bodies have the particle nature related to three-dimensional space, and our consciousness has the wave or distributed nature related to time. But just how far does the distributed part of the universe, our consciousness, go? Like time in our universe, it is everywhere. So let's revisit the expanded view of our consciousness. So we talked about how in time your consciousness can be thought of music as a combination of frequencies, and each note represents a distinct energy, and you could have notes that are related to your emotional states, your mental states, and your physical states. But now let's revisit this with an emphasis on resonance. Resonance, a 1/time phenomenon. So here we have two tuning forks, and the tuning fork on the left is struck and it creates a note. And the tuning fork on the right is tuned to the same note, so it begins to vibrate. And then below you can see that there are tuning forks which are larger and smaller, which vibrate to different frequencies. They do not vibrate to the initial note created by the tuning fork on the left. Now, one of the other aspects of resonance is that it can be used as an energy transfer mechanism. So let's take the example here where we generate a note and we send it out through a loudspeaker, and it's tuned to the resonant frequency of a wine glass. If we tune the frequency exactly right and we increase the intensity, eventually the wine glass will explode. Now, this doesn't only happen in this one example of a wine glass. This happens also when armies march across a bridge. They have to break step, because if they create a frequency with their marching that matches a natural frequency in the bridge, they could destroy the bridge. And this has also happened in suspended bridges, where the wind blowing through the cable suspension of the bridges created a resonant note that was the same resonant note as a natural frequency in the bridge, and the bridge destroyed itself. Energy of thoughts, emotions, and intentions. Just like music, we can feel these differences between our different thoughts, emotions, and intentions. Let's think of every thought as a note. It has a distinct energy and therefore frequency in non-local time. Now apply the same to different emotions, where each has a distinct energy and therefore frequency in non-local time. And finally, that every intention has a distinct energy and therefore frequency in non-local time. If you think about it, every man-made object and social structure started with an intention to create something useful. That was then followed by thoughts and emotions to manifest these constructs inside our consciousness into the physical world. It is easy to see the results of houses and bridges and a lot of the physical objects that we have around us. But the laws and social norms that we have are just as tangible in guiding us in our daily lives. Energy in the field of time. The electrodynamic equations that I derived for 3 dimensions of time show that the energy density of time far exceeds the energy density of space that we are familiar with. Now, where else in the universe has physics found huge amounts of energy? Well, in the quantum vacuum. The quantum vacuum is also known as the zero-point field. This is a virtually infinite source of energy, at least from the perspective of our needs here on Earth, and is the same energy that all electrons in the universe tap into to prevent them from running out of energy. So let's look into this quantum vacuum energy, and it might help us to understand the energy in time. Quantum vacuum or zero-point field. In a previous video, we discussed how energy is equal to Planck's constant times frequency. Now, Planck's constant is a very small number, but the universe supports an infinite number of frequencies, so the energy of the universe is just about infinite. A limit was calculated on the number of frequencies, and this limit was labeled the Planck frequency. This energy is called the quantum vacuum, and it is undetectable because it is in perfect balance. If a tiny portion of this unbalanced energy in the universe were to manifest out of the quantum vacuum, it would vaporize all the known matter in our universe. It does not do this because it is in a state of balance. Now let's use the analogy of a sealed box with air to understand how the balance and imbalance of this energy in the quantum vacuum would manifest. Analogy of a box at sea level. So here we have a box that's sealed at sea level. The pressure inside the box is the same as the outside of the box, that is 14 pounds per square inch. So the balance of pressure means there's no evidence of this air pressure on the sides of the box, since the same pressure is on the inside as the outside of the wall. it is in a state of balance. Now we'll consider the box floating up in the atmosphere. Now let's tie a balloon to this sealed box. And we'll notice that as the balloon pulls the box higher and higher, the balance of pressure changes. The pressure on the outside of the box gets less and less while there's no change on the inside. And this differential pressure will begin to act as a force on the inside to expand the box until eventually the box will blow apart because there's no pressure on the outside. Now we consider the box sinking to the bottom of the ocean. Now let's tie a weight to the sealed box. As the box starts to sink, the pressure changes, and the pressure outside the box gets more and more, where the pressure inside the box stays the same. Now the differential pressure acts as a force on the outside to compress the sealed box until it is crushed by the outside force. Either the floating or the sinking box explains how energy can manifest out of a perfect balance. So electron motion is one manifestation of the quantum vacuum. We can detect matter because the effects of fields are carried by photons. Electrons in a circular orbit radiate photons due to the acceleration of their circular orbit. Now the fate of an orbiting body, for example our Earth, is that it slowly loses energy, and so our Earth will eventually crash into our Sun and be burned to a crisp. Now electrons orbiting around a nucleus would suffer the same fate if the electrons could not recharge themselves. The theory is that the electrons are getting energy from this quantum vacuum, or as it's commonly known, the zero-point field. So the electron is oscillating between radiating and absorbing energy to keep its orbit constant over billions of years. The energy of time is part of the quantum vacuum. So there's a small change in the balance of the quantum vacuum that allows energy to bleed from the quantum vacuum and be absorbed by the electrons. Within the electrons there is a perfect balance of energy absorption and energy radiated, which allows them to maintain consistent properties over billions of years. If this had not happened in this particular way, our matter would change over time because the electrons in the atom would lose energy and be captured by the atomic nucleus in the same way that our Earth loses energy over the next billions of years and will eventually be captured by our Sun. I hypothesize that the energy of time is part of the energy of the quantum vacuum. This seems natural since frequency is a 1 divided by time property. The quantum vacuum could be much larger than the Planck's limits imposed by science, but it really doesn't matter since this is already an absolutely incredible amount of energy. As previously stated, a tiny portion of this quantum vacuum energy is enough to vaporize all the matter in our universe. So the energy of time is a tiny part of this quantum vacuum. What I'm doing here is I'm qualifying this statement, and I'm going to do this by using an analogy. The arrow above represents all the detectable frequencies that we know of, and what we can see represents a tiny, tiny fraction of the whole spectrum shown by the colors in this spectrum. So just like the familiar visible light, what we can access frequency-wise with our consciousness, highlighted in yellow, in this three-dimensional time universe out of all of the quantum vacuum frequencies is an extremely tiny portion. I assume other universes and other beings have access to the other portions of this frequency spectrum. Tapping into the energy of the field of time. I'd like to clarify that the discussion so far is about our access to this energy with our consciousness. It holds the power of our ideas, but our limited understanding of who we really are limits our access to this energy, and I assume it will change in the future, but that's why I put it as such a small sliver of the quantum vacuum frequency spectrum, since we are our own worst enemies as far as tapping into this energy. Now, I believe that through the appropriate technology development, we could access far more of this energy. It could be that all of the quantum vacuum energy is a time energy. But it really does not matter what the proportion is, because an extremely tiny portion of this will power all of our human needs for as long as the Earth is livable. Now, a note of caution. Once we have this technology, it would make atomic bombs look like kids' toys. We would not only be able to destroy the Earth, but our solar system and beyond as well. So let's hope that we have the enlightened consciousness and sense of responsibility to go along with this knowledge. This is part of being multidimensional beings. You have far more access to the energy of the universe, but also far more responsibility for our actions. My goal in these slides so far is to impress on you how much energy is available to us as multidimensional beings. And the next part of the presentation, I'll show you how I visualize this interaction taking place regarding our consciousness, since these videos are about time and human consciousness. In the last video, I showed how the quantum properties of the two interlinked universes are correlated. We have our familiar universe of 3D space that has a local property that is connected to the non-local space in the time universe. Likewise, our familiar non-local time is connected to the 3D time in the time universe. In the Matrix of Time series and the expanded series of time videos, both available on my channel, links are shown below, I show how the non-local time, the time that is everywhere in our familiar universe of 3D space, transforms into 3D time in the other universe of time. Included in this transform is the transformation of our familiar 3D space into the non-local form of space that is everywhere in 3D time. It is not my intention to explain how this works in this video, since it is done in other series. So far in this video series, our consciousness has been linked to our familiar non-local time. Now in the next set of slides in this video, I hypothesize how our consciousness is correlated to this interlinked universe of 3D time. In this way, it's easier to understand how we as humans are entangled together in our consciousness, and how what we think, feel, and intend can have real structures in the dimensions of time. So in the next couple of slides, we're going to look at the phenomenon of resonance in multidimensional time. And we're going to look at two coupled matter universes, one based on our familiar 3D space and the other one on three-dimensional time. So in this bottom one, we have matter universe 1 of three-dimensional space and scalar time, and that's our familiar universe. Now, the term scalar means single variable. So when you hear scalar space, it means a single variable of space, and when you hear scalar time, it means a single variable of time. In axis 1, we have distance. In axis 2, we have distance. And when you take the properties of distance in axis 1 and multiply it by the distance in axis 2, you get the property of area. And then the white arrow represents distance in the third axis. And if you multiply all three of these distances together, you get the property of volume. Now let's add this second matter universe of three-dimensional time and scalar space. Now the axes that we're going to assign are energy. Energy is a property of time. So the first axis of energy we're going to associate with mental states. The second energy on axis 2 we're going to associate with emotional. And you can think of emotional states embed mental states because it's the thought that triggers the emotion. And then finally we have energy on the third axis, and I'll call that intentional, because intentional incorporates both mental and emotional states inside of it. And these two matter universes are coupled together. So they are linked together, and they're linked via the ratio of space to time, or what we call motion. So we start off with two people in our familiar matter universe. And what we see is that we can actually now map the mental, emotional, intentional states of these two individuals. So based on what they are thinking, feeling, and intending, we can map out a person on the left in one way and person on the right in a different way. And from this map, we can see that even though these two individuals are standing very close to each other in space, we can see that in time, their mental, emotional, and intentional states are very different. So what I've done is I've created some blue dots, some blue spheres above each of these states in three-dimensional time. And these blue spheres represent the summation of the energy of all three states. So from this more simplified representation, we can see that the person on the right has put in far more energy into their ideas than the person on the left. So now let's take another example. We take two individuals that in our familiar 3D space are far apart, but both of them have the exact same idea, and they're putting a lot of effort mentally, emotionally, and intentionally into these. What would happen? Well, what would happen is that these ideas, these mental, emotional, intentional energies would line up in exactly the same place, and they would line up on top of each other, and they would create far more energy than each one of them would individually. And this energy would then not only be created much larger, but it's also feedback in that each one of them would then be energized by the energy that's being put in far more than the energy that they're putting in, because this energy has a two-way relation. Now, the example I gave here is two people far apart in space, but these two people could be right next to each other. I just wanted to say that this phenomena happens independent of space. And so obviously if these people are in the same room and they're sharing ideas together, this phenomenon would be exactly the same. In fact, it probably would be amplified because they are in the same space and in the same time. Now let's take the interesting example of a live event. Here the alignment of all these dimensions, mental, emotional, and intentional, is very large because everybody is excited to be at this concert, and the musicians have also an intentional, emotional, and mental alignment with the audience. And so you can imagine that the energy at this event would be very large and everybody can feed on it. And people recognize it. The band members recognize that there's an energy to the audience, and the audience recognizes that there's an energy to the band, and they feed off of each other. So here you have a whole bunch of people in the same place in both space and time, which no wonder we recognize live events as a special experience. So let's take the concept of a new idea. A new idea would have a rather small field until enough time, which is the same thing as saying enough energy, has been put into it by the person with this new idea to really make a difference. A second person would benefit from the initial energy put in by the first person when they think the same thought, and so it would go on to the third person, the fourth person, and it would build up from there. Now this concept can also explain synchronicity, where person one thinks about another person and that other person immediately responds with a text or call. You can see how this aligns up in the fields in three-dimensional time. Now let's look at the concept of going viral. So here we've had a group of people who've had thoughts about some particular subject and the field of energy has been growing, and the next person now is directed to this particular idea and they watch a short video or watch something on YouTube. And this next person quickly feels the excitement of the energy being generated around this idea in three-dimensional time. And because of this excitement, they then pass it on to the next person who passes it on to the next person. Eventually, the energy field would be large enough that it would go, as we now call it, viral. We should also remember that everyone has a part of themselves in this time universe. So it's a back and forth process. Don't think of it as just being, people generating ideas and passing energy from us into this time dimension. The time dimension is giving us energy and giving us feedback and directing us based on our thoughts, emotions, and intentions. So family fields. Each family would create its own energy field. And here we have one family and we can see a blue sphere that represents them. And then we would have a second family and they would have their own specific energy field in this universe of time. So all the thoughts, emotions, and intentions, not only of the current generations alive, but also of all the previous generations, are stored in this field. This is the field that the new generations of this family will be born into, and they will accept or reject parts of this field based on their own personal interests. Interactions between these fields. Each energy field created in time interacts with all the others. If we go back to the slide on resonance, we see how when one tuning fork is struck, any other tuning forks that are in the same frequency will start to vibrate in resonance. And so it's the same with these fields. So all these fields send out an energy in the form of frequencies, and these frequencies interact with all the other fields, either harmoniously or inharmoniously. We instinctively feel these interactions. If we change the thoughts and the emotions, we change the energy and therefore the frequency content of the field, and then we vibrate harmoniously or inharmoniously with a whole other set of field. Now, to expand beyond just the family dynamics that we've given an example in here, each individual within their own family field will have a reaction based on their frequency content and the frequency content in the family field, and then also with the other family field. And if new ideas were brought in, these new ideas would have their own frequency content and they would react differently to the family on the left than they would to the family on the right. Now, there'll be other fields that are due to larger groups of people. So you can think of these field concepts can be extrapolated beyond your own and your family to culture due to local geographic location, to nationality, and to actually being humans as earthlings on planet Earth. And the concept of local culture and local geographic location, maybe this is where the feeling of homesickness comes from, where your consciousness wants to feel something familiar. So slices of this 3D time universe. So here in the left-hand side, I've taken 3 slices in time, one from the past, one from the now, one from the future, and used these spheres to represent the energy of a particular thought train or emotional train or intent train. And you can see that the green one, the person has, or the people have put more and more energy behind it, and over time it's increasing in size. The yellow one is staying the same. And then in the white one, right in the now, the person has decided to make a change when that's designated by the red line. So the idea is that as a person has different thoughts and emotions about a future event in their lives, they will hopefully choose that action or event that resonates with them because it intuitively feels right, or make a new decision because it intuitively feels wrong. Now let's look at our layered non-local connection to the 3D space universe outside of us, based on everything that we've discussed so far, because we're becoming more and more complex beings. So we start on the left-hand side where we have your fields, and those are going to be the strongest. And then we have the fields that are associated with the family, and they'll have less strength and less influence on your consciousness. And then the local culture, their nationality, and you being a citizen of Earth. And in these, I've just progressively made them smaller and smaller, and that's just a default example. But each individual and each culture, these might be different strengths. But normally, your field would be the strongest and your family field would be the next, and then where local culture, nationality, and being a citizen of the Earth falls, and the strength of these would depend on each individual. So continuing on, we now look at the layered non-local connection to the universe inside of us of 3D time. And one of the first fields would be the field associated with supporting your physical body. So this field would support all the patterns that we talked about previously that would guide the development of your physical body to create the unique physical body that you have. But it would also be part of controlling the body functions and your survival. The second one would be your thoughts and emotions, your reactions to ideas about yourself and local culture. The third one would be possibly heart attributes. So it would be your concept of what love is, what family consists of, your connection to your friends, what compassion is, and so on. The fourth one would be associated possibly with mind. And when I say mind, I don't mean the brain. So these attributes would be associated with your ideas of what purpose is, your ideas of what philosophy is about life and living, and all sorts of other ideologies. And then this would continue on until you get to the final state, which would be the cosmic attributes, where you are absorbed by your connection to the divine or the infinite, or at least to the connection of what you believe the divine or the infinite consists of. In this example, I chose 5 example fields, and I put associations with each field just to demonstrate how these layered fields would add up and add complexity to who we are. I'm assuming that in reality it would be far more complex. This is just for an example. So in summary, you are truly a multidimensional being. You have access not only to the familiar universe of 3D space outside of yourself, but you also have another whole universe of 3D time inside of you. As a humanity, we are fast realizing that what we think, feel, and intend really matters. It is literally matter in another universe of time that affects you and everyone around you. So take care of what you think, feel, and intend, since you are making a difference, hopefully positive, in every moment of now. End note, beyond these 2 universes of space and time. So we've talked about how your physical body is clearly a structure of matter in 3-dimensional space. I've hypothesized that your consciousness is also matter in a coupled universe of multidimensional time. These 2 coupled parts of you in the form of 2 coupled universes of multidimensional space and multidimensional time create a more complete picture of matter and of you. Like dark matter and dark energy, there are parts that are not detectable yet. I definitely think there are dimensions beyond these expanded universes of space and time. What these dimensions comprise of are beyond what I can speculate. Takeaway messages. We discussed the quantum vacuum, or as it's otherwise known, the zero-point field. This is a virtually infinite source of energy that all electrons in the universe tap into to prevent from running out of energy. We used a sealed box at sea level, floating up in the atmosphere and sinking down below the sea, to understand how imbalance of the quantum vacuum manifests energy. I hypothesized that the energy of time is part of this huge quantum vacuum energy because both are based on frequency, and frequency is a time phenomenon. Resonance, a time phenomena, was discussed in detail and how it manifests in the 3D time universe. Example of how consciousness via the energy of mental thoughts, emotions, and intentions can link humans near and far in 3D space. There's examples of live events, new ideas, and going viral to describe how all this would work. Or describe different fields of consciousness relating to both outside and inside the human. In summary, we are multidimensional beings that with this model can make us realize that we have far more impact on our own experience and the experiences of others than we might initially have expected. The next video will discuss in a bit more detail how the two universes of 3D space and 3D time are interlinked. If you want to hear more of these Matrix of Time videos, please subscribe below to be notified of new presentations. You can also go to my website, www.multidimensionaltime.com, and there you'll see that there's a book available. There's also some technical white papers, and all the links to my videos that are available on my YouTube channel can be found on my website. Okay, thank you very much.